the people who are first in category, it's very easy for them to maintain that market leader approach. It takes a pretty big stuff up for them. For them to fall off that perch. So generally, if you're first into a category, you are going to lead that for a significant period of time unless you rescind that somehow.
You're going to find Harvard. If same thing with like Coca-Cola with Hertz as like hire cars. So yeah, like you said, it takes some mistakes or maybe just a really good competitor that enters the market.
We're all part of this whole money game.
Welcome back to another episode of Beers and Business. I'm Abe Dearmer, CEO of Appsembler.
I'm Andrew Martin, CEO of Teamgate CRM, and we're back for another episode. And we're doing
episode
it on
16,
and we're doing it on a Saturday morning. So there is a high risk that either of our children may burst in from the door at any time. So
risk level is high. But episode 16. Okay. And last time, I think we really suck at doing like the intros about what we're going to cover. But today we'll go through our normal weekly wrap-ups, and then we're going to go into the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. So we went through our books last week, and Andrew and I were talking. We're like, man, there's so much stuff to draw out of the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing that we felt like we should dedicate a podcast to it. So it's going to be rough to get through all 22 because there's a lot to cover. But I think the main ones that we really want to cover right at the start. We'll try and make it quick. But we'll see how we go. So let's get into it. First things first, let's have a look at the beers. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, mate, go for it. What do you got?
Today I've got Flash Kate. And Flash Kate is an IPA from Devil's Hollow, and just pouring it in now. Let's have a look at her. There's Kate. Looking good. Nice IPA. Flash Kate, the backstory of this one's actually good. 1.7 standard drinks, so a bit on the strong side, but that's IPAs. So this is, Flash Kate's got a good backstory. So Catherine Mary Josephine Lee, better known as Flash Kate, was born in Dubbo. Her battle with arch rival Tilly Devine to become the queen of the Sydney underworld fueled the Razor Gang wars of Darlinghurst. The court sent Kate back to Dubbo, where she opened Flash Kate's Casino and Brothel. Fine establishment, I'm sure. Now the site of the Milestone Hotel, which is a pub that's open today. I could definitely see how that place would be a brothel. Downstairs is like, that would probably have been where the brothel was. When sentenced, she supposedly said, "I'd rather be dead than alive in Dubbo." She's not the only person to say that, I'd say. She was a nasty bit of work. So there you go. Flash.
Interesting drink choice.
Let's see if the drink tastes better than her personality. Yeah, it's actually a pretty smooth IPA. You know how sometimes you get like that really tangy aftertaste? It's actually pretty good. Not bad. Well done, nice. Devil's Hollow once again. Flash Kate coming through with the goods.
And I think I've given you shit in the past for drinking a guava sour. But today I've jumped on the train and I've got a guava sour.
Piece of shit.
I knew I was doing this podcast at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, so I wanted to keep it light in comparison to the previous podcast we did at 6 a.m. where I think you all stitched me up. So let's have a
that was a self. You knew what was going to happen, mate. Don't lie to me.
Well, I think you nominated me for the vote, to be fair.
I may have voted from the 20 dummy accounts to get the result I wanted.
That is a terrible pour.
Gives a look, mate. Gives a look.
Let's leave that there for about 10 minutes. Very fruity. I will say that from the get-go. I can smell it.
Guava sour.
So what do we got here? So packed with guava and soured with local.
What brewery is it from, though?
It's from Boiling Pot. So Boiling Pot is a spot up here on the Sunshine Coast, which is also where the brewery is. So packed with guava and soured with local Kenilworth dairy yogurt. This refreshing sour is full-flavoured yet easy drinking tropical brew. We love this beer and we hope you will too.
Yeah, nice. Can you have a taste yet, mate? Give us a look at the pour. Come on, show the people. Oh, Jesus.
Let's go from the can, eh? It's sour.
It doesn't look like you're enjoying it too much, mate, by that face.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. I don't know if it's because it's a guava sour, but obviously I expected it kind of tastes like a watered down guava cruiser that they've added sherbet to. That's a
Like
terrible
added
description.
like the warhead.
Yeah, it
Stuff
literally
too?
tastes like a sour warhead.
Yeah, right. Hey, some people are into that.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. Getting through this one might be a one beer episode.
One big
today.
show. Oh, that's good. How's the week been, mate? Let's talk about that. Hey, how's your Strava jockey going, mate?
Anyone who doesn't know what Abe's referring to, there's been an article released where I think is it rich people?
It was a reel on Instagram.
Corporates of
Apparently, it's
people,
big in Singapore.
yeah, people paying other people to run for them using their Strava account, so it looks like they've run a lot of kilometers per week and
It's like
active.
CEOs and executives, so they can like have office clout to win their like Strava competitions or get kudos for running. And then you
To be
hire
fair,
a jockey.
I could probably just strap it to my son and let him run around and probably.
I just think it's funny how they charge,
up
right? They
some
charge per kilometre, but then if you want a faster pace, then they increase the cost. It's just it's like a usage-based model, right?
I know a few army serving members that would probably pay for that service to pass a BFA
Yeah.
once a year. So we won't
A
judge
BFA
them
jockey.
too much. But yeah, the week's been all right. It's been pretty quiet. I've had some sick kids home from school, so been in and out of the office this week. But yeah, not too bad. We're ramping up as Q3 has started now, so we're doing a lot of new tests and testing different markets for Teamgate, which is exciting. So I'm really keen to see how that goes. And our biggest test that we're going for this quarter, I launched yesterday. So I'm
Nice,
really
mate.
excited to see how that goes. And if it goes the way I want it to go, it provides us a really good opportunity to expand our company into a lot of different markets pretty rapidly. So yeah, pretty excited. But what about you? How's old App Assembler going?
Yeah, good, mate. We're once again start a new quarter. It's like new year, new me every quarter, right? But we're continuing our tests. One thing that we really wanted to tick off this year was getting the website redone. So we've got the product pages done in the last quarter. We'll do the homepage this quarter and also set up a new free trial flow for App Assembler, which would be pretty cool. So I'm excited to get all that launched and see how that tests out. For me, last week of school holidays down in New South Wales. And yesterday the kids went to the Western Plains Zoo, which is a massive open plains zoo in Dubbo. Stayed the night with my brother, and
Nice.
he works out there. So they went to work with him in the morning and they do like a school holiday program at the zoo where you get to go and hang out with the zookeepers and do different things around the zoo, see all the animals, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really good day out for the kids. They enjoyed it, loved doing all the little activities that are there and things like that as well. So they're, it's a good way to finish the school holidays for them.
Yeah, nice. So back at school on Monday.
Yeah, thank God.
Are they? Yeah, I was going to say who's more keen for them to go back, you or them?
Look, they actually weren't too disappointed when I said they have to go back on Monday. So I think they're reasonably excited, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
Nice. That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly it, mate. All right, let's get into. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get into learnings of the week. What's your learning of the week?
Yeah, mine is very fresh. I think it comes from
hot off the
yesterday.
press.
Just the reliance on tech in not only in Australia but globally. But I think what surprised me most was probably in Australia, because for those listening, there was a big outage yesterday. I knew there was an outage through like Microsoft, because I knew a lot of the Windows computers had completely crashed. But then it's come out that it was due to a tech upgrade through CrowdStrike. So that upgrade or that issue caused outages worldwide. And it was specifically seen in Australia. There was a lot of uproar around betting agencies being down. So Sportsbet had crashed and the TAB had crashed hours before the rugby league kicked off for the weekend. So a lot of upset 40-year-old men that had nothing to do on the weekend. And then it crashed a lot of our banks, right? So, people are unable to access their banking and their money.
Funnily enough, the four seem to be unaffected. So the big four in Australia is like our four biggest banks seem to be unaffected by it. It was like you could say like the minnows, right? Like Bendigo Bank was affected and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's a win for the big four.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't know.
Put their own infrastructure in place, or I don't know.
I don't know how they avoided it, because surely they use Microsoft, right? That's the biggest thing. But I guess they had, maybe because a lot of it's on-prem instead of in the cloud.
Yeah.
Potentially that, like on private servers or something like that. That could be the reason why. But it's a big win for the big banks, right? They'll probably win some customers over that. But I was waiting for it, and it came out, all the cash is king pundits out there like,
cashless
this is why I always carry cash,
this is why they want us
mate.
to go cashless.
God, shut up.
I saw a lot of the conspiracy theories coming out. We were told this was going to happen. Next, it's going to be the power grid. The power grid's going to go down after this, and then that's it. Yeah, but that's my learning of the week is just the reliance on tech and how easily something like that can go down. We've experienced it before, where if things like AWS go down and your systems are on that, there's not much you can do, and that pain is passed on to your customers. So we were lucky to not be affected, but a lot of our customers had all of their systems down. So whilst we were operational, a lot of our customers weren't. So
I think that's it's a learning, right? That it's a bit of a worry that something like Microsoft has a third-party app that can have such a huge astronomical effect on its ability to operate, because Microsoft is seen as, it's Apple and Microsoft, right, for the OS of choice. And to see Microsoft go down like that, pretty worrying. But I think the biggest thing that's going to come out, I was actually talking to someone today who said that they had shares in CrowdStrike, and they were looking at their portfolio. They're like, what happened? Yeah. Why are my shares down? And then they went and looked into it, and they're like, oh, wow, CrowdStrike was in an absolute bloodbath. So
a lot of tech stocks are down at the moment as a result.
Yeah, and is this the catalyst for the tech dump? Like that's what people will be saying now. That'll be the articles that are coming out and all that kind of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, it just shows how important, when you're in tech, having a rollback procedure and having a disaster recovery plan is, because, whoever did the disaster recovery plan for CrowdStrike's probably having some serious questions being asked of them and their position right now.
Nice.
Big ones.
And,
but
what's yours?
Yeah, so my one is about building a vision, right? And it sort of links into the Immutable Laws of Marketing, and I've been thinking about it for a while. And I said there, new quarter, new me, jokingly there, about goals and things like that. But you need to have a vision for where you want to take something, and it takes time to get there. The people who win with that vision have the patience and resolve to get to that point. But because you have a vision, you're also able to be flexible, I think, is the key bit there. So it sort of ingrains this flexibility that allows you to remain on those solid foundations, or remain on the path to get to where you want to be. You look at anyone who's successful, they always have a vision about where they want to be in life or what they want to do in life. You look at, there's the immortal rugby league players. They have setbacks in their life, and they just have this vision about who they are, where they want to be. And it just takes time and reps to get there. Anything in life, whether it be business, you just need to have that clear vision and goal. And it goes into, we're talking about with habits, talking about with marketing, things like that, is building that out. You look at what, and this goes in my quote a little bit more as well, is what Elon Musk has been able to achieve with things like Starlink and Tesla, is he just had this vision and just went after it. And it took time, and it didn't always run smoothly, and SpaceX and things like that. You see the failures and you just say, okay, well, that didn't really stop him. He's like, okay, cool, we failed. What's next? How do we move forward from this? And I think that's like a really key bit, which leads into my quote, which from Elon Musk, and brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. And I think that's a really important piece, is as long as you build the perception of what your company is, it will catch up to it. And I think he's been a real pundit of that, is like, Tesla is the electric car manufacturer for the future. And Tesla, when they started, they weren't that great. But over time, perception became reality, and now they have, the market share. You look at Starlink, right, where perception is with the future of internet, and it's starting to become that reality, right?
Yeah, and I think we touch on both your quote and your learning in a couple of the laws that we'll go through today. So good ones to tie it in. And my quote's going to be similar. It's marketing focused. The best marketing doesn't feel like marketing, and that's by Tom Fishburne. And everyone experiences it. When you're getting those emails or you're getting those text messages, and it's just like just blatant marketing, blatant selling. And the best stuff doesn't feel like it. You're seeing, like I said a couple of episodes ago, the video of, I think it was it was an agency that worked with underprivileged kids, and it was just like scrolling through my feed and watched this video, and it was marketing, but it didn't feel like it, and it resonated really quickly.
I think with the rise of social media marketing, it's becoming more and more prevalent, right, where people do like the unboxing, the reviews, people wearing things when they're doing activities and tagging the company. And it's like, oh, that looks nice, or that looks like it would do something that I would need because this person's doing it. It's the big thing about influencer marketing that makes it so powerful. Just by having someone use your product who has a big following, you can suddenly have this astronomical effect where it doesn't feel like marketing because they're just using it for something they do every day. Like Kim Kardashian, as much as I despise everything they stand for, whenever they buy a new product or show something on their Instagram or TikTok or the show The Kardashians, right, suddenly that sales of that product is just going to absolutely skyrocket. And people often won't realize a lot of these companies where it's just organically that they pick it up, like not a paid promotion. Suddenly they'll be like, why have our sales just doubled? What the hell's going on? And then they realize, like, oh, it's because Kim Kardashian just wore this or showed it on a show, and now everyone wants it.
Yeah. Very. And it got to the point of like, well, now you I think there's laws in place where you have to actually on like Instagram, you have to list that it's a paid sponsorship now, because I think it got so strong, and just happening everywhere. But let's dive into it. We've got 22 laws to go through. We're going to keep it pretty brief, probably a minute or two per law, and see if we can come in under our normal time. I'll stick to the timings. It's probably just going to be Abe that blows me out. So we'll see how we go. But the 22 immutable marketing laws. This was one of Abe's top 5 books from the previous episode. So I'll let you kick us off with law number 1.
I must say this book was recommended to me by a fella called Paul Lynch, Irishman, works for Scaleworks. We'll see if we can get him on the podcast. Really interesting guy, has a lot of knowledge around marketing, branding. And he's like, if you read this book, you got to read it. And as soon as I started reading it, I was like, wow, this is amazing book. Really easy to read and really easy to go through. Once again, Andrew has taken the coward's choice, and he is listening to the audiobook because, as we all know, Andrew can't read. So the audiobook is the choice for him. And how is the audiobook?
I'm a multitasker, mate. It's good. Got a few chapters out while mowing the lawn the other week. But yeah, it's good. And I think you learn pretty quick. There's some really good takeaways, from those first early chapters. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably focus a little bit on the laws at the start. It'll probably take us a little bit longer to cover off on the first few laws, and then it'll be a bit quicker towards the end because they're a bit.
Yeah, I think that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because once you get down towards the tail end of the list, you will see that they're not so much generic, but probably a bit simpler to look at. But the first one and the most important law is the law of leadership. So in summary, it's better to be first than it is to be better. We see this constantly with companies. You look at in the tech space like Salesforce, you look at in the Coca-Cola, Hertz, Harvard University. When you look at things in Australia like CBA, first, right? Things like that. And when you look the people who are first in category, it's very easy for them to maintain that market leader approach. It takes a pretty big stuff up for them for them to fall off that perch. So generally, if you're first into a category, you are going to lead that for a significant period of time unless you rescind that somehow.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point from the book is like, even if you don't know what company was first in the category, if you were to search leading college in the US, what are you going to find? You're going to find Harvard. And then if you do the research, Harvard was the leading, they were the first college. If same thing with like Coca-Cola, with Hertz as like hire cars. So yeah, like you said, it takes some mistakes or maybe just a really good competitor that enters the market to fall off that perch. But obviously not everyone can be first.
I'd say it's very hard to be first.
It's very
nowadays.
hard to be first. We've got a lot of things in this world now, which brings us into the second law, which is the law of the category.
Well,
so
one thing I would say, to be the law of leadership, to bring it more specific for everyone here, is that you could be the first of your category in a geo-specific location. So things that are more brick and mortar. So it's very hard to be the first Coca-Cola because, soft drinks distributed everywhere. But if you're a first of its kind for things like, let's say, a massage parlor in a particular town, you are the first there, right? So you've got the law of leadership for that geo-specific location. You're the first builder, the first electrician. If you're the first person to open a gym in that location, you're the first there. So I think that's important as well, is to look at the geo-specific first that can be achieved.
yeah, for sure. And law number 2 is the law of the category. So similar to the geo space that Abe just said, but it's, if you can't be first in a category, set up a new category you can be first in. So, the example in the book, it talks about Charles Lindbergh, who was the first person to fly the Atlantic solo, and then says, who was the second person? And
no one cares.
No one cares. No one can recall it. But the example is
Bert Hinkler.
Bert Hinkler. If you can't be first, obviously, the first person on the moon, you can't replicate that, but you can be the first in a new category. So Amelia Earhart was the first female to fly the Atlantic solo, and I would argue is probably more famous or as famous as Charles Lindbergh. So, for CRM, for example, you can't be the first CRM on the market, but if there's a niche out there that's being ignored, or, it might be the first CRM for SaaS, the first CRM for nonprofits, the first CRM for whatever category it is. So think of different ways. Electricians, we've had examples before. I know Mitch isn't the first at it, but he is Mitch from Zeus Electrical that we've had on the podcast. He's very proficient in LEDs recently, and he's had a lot of really effective marketing using those LED jobs that he's done. But when you look at the geo, how many people are doing big LED jobs in the residential space like Mitch? Probably not
but
many.
Look at Brothers and Books, right? Bibliotherapy, providing, there's plenty of charities out there. There's plenty of charities for, for veterans, for police, and focus on mental health. But there's not many, well, I would say there's probably no charities in Australia that focus on bibliotherapy like Brothers and Books does, right? So Dylan there has owned the category. And then another thing to look at is, to bring it back down again, is gyms. So there's usually a number of gyms in any one location, but how people break us up in the category is like, we're a powerlifting gym, we're a bodybuilding gym, we're a CrossFit gym, right?
Functional
so now
training,
it's like, it's a category that you're in. So that's how they build out these law of categories, and people go, I want to do CrossFit. So they go to a CrossFit gym. I want to do bodybuilding. So I go to a bodybuilding gym. I want to do powerlifting. I need to go to a powerlifting gym. And so that's how you build out that category. And it's just about finding people that want to be a part of that category. All right. And then law of the mind. So this is where it starts to get a little bit funny, right? Because we talk about the law of leadership, the law of category, and now we start to break this down about, well, it's not all bad news if you're not the first in the market or the first to create that category, because there's the law of the mind, right? It's better to be first in the mind than first in the marketplace. And so this is a really interesting one because, as people would probably know, Apple wasn't the first computer, but now Apple was able to be remembered because of its name, because the early computers had like really random like letter and numerical sort of values, but the Apple computer was just an Apple computer, right? So it's really, really simple. Like, I've got an Apple. So better to be first in the mind than first in the marketplace. So if you're able to dethrone the person who was first, the leader or the category, then you're able to be that first concept in the mind. And when I think about this, it makes me think back to, okay, well, how can this be tailored through when you look at, well, Apple was, wasn't the first computer, but now it's referenced as the first in the mind. And it's like similar to Apple was, an operating system before that, but now Microsoft is an operating system, right? So generally people now, through Apple's, extension and changes, Apple's so much more than just a computer company. Whereas when you think of Microsoft, I generally think that that's still just a computer company. So that owns that space in my mind for when I think about computers and operating systems. I still think of Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah, perception is massive. And that's what the next law of perception. So it's not a battle of products, it's a battle of perception. So like Abe just said, if you can get into someone's mind and have that perception of being, Apple versus Microsoft, he views Microsoft as the operating system or the computer system. And a good example for this one is the car industry in the US. So there's 3 exported Japanese vehicle retailers in the US. So Honda, Nissan, and Toyota. And Honda is the number 1 selling vehicle in the US. Now, the perception for a lot of people is that vehicles are sold or products are sold based on quality and safety and whatnot. So you would then assume that in Japan, where these same vehicles are made, they would be in the same order of vehicles sold. So I think Honda was number 1 in the US. But when you look at in Japan, Honda is 3 of 3. So it's actually the lowest sold car out of the 3. And the reason being is in Honda, in Japan, if you were to do an advertisement for Honda, or if you were asked to ask someone about Honda, their perception straight away is motorcycles. Honda makes motorcycles, and the motorcycle market in Japan is massive, and Honda is the leader there. So do they want a car made by a motorcycle company? And generally they don't. And that's how that perception is reflected in the market. And it's funny to think, like in Australia, if they were to launch, we both have families and kids. If we were in the market for a new family car and we were comparing, the market leader or, Harley Davidson just bought out a new family car, what would you go with? And if I was a single man, sure, I'd test out the Harley car. But, if you're going for something for your family or something that you want, quality assurance, I don't know if I'd go down that road. And that's where that perception is key.
Yeah. And I look at this when I think about perception, one thing that I've been thinking about recently is Harvey Norman versus the Good Guys. So the Good Guys also owns JB Hi-Fi. So you could almost say Good Guys and JB Hi-Fi versus Harvey Norman, right? So what do you think about JB Hi-Fi when someone mentions JB Hi-Fi?
I like JB Hi-Fi, but if you're going
do you think it just gives you good deals? Best price? Yeah. You're going to get best price on things?
I think you can negotiate. I would, in comparison to did you say Harvey Norman?
Yeah, Harvey Norman, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would go to Harvey Norman for quality. I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know why. You assume Harvey Norman is quality, right?
Yeah.
You assume like it's more luxury goods. If you're, if you want something that's going to last forever, you go to Harvey Norman, right? But you go to the JB Hi-Fi and you more think like, I'll get a good price, probably get a good deal, may not be the best product, but it's going to suit my price range. And what do you think about Good Guys? Like they got their price beat comparison, right? So they're all about, hey, we want to compete on price. Harvey Norman's your luxury seller. And I didn't rehearse this or anything, so I'm just putting Andrew on the spot. But Good Guys is now retailer if you want the best price, right? And so different markets is what they're aiming to target. But funnily enough, when you look at Harvey Norman and the Good Guys side by side, because you probably did a lot of look for different appliances and things like that as well when you were setting up your house. And really the price between Harvey Norman and Good Guys is completely the same. They have the same products. Nothing really changes. The sales might be different at different times. But overall, the supplier actually dictates the price more than the store does. And I think that's the key thing, is that Harvey Norman and the Good Guys are selling the same products, but they have different perceptions. So if you're someone who's more into luxury goods and probably has a higher income, you're going to Harvey Norman. But if you're someone who has middle class and potentially wants to try and get a good deal, you're going to go to the Good Guys. But realistically, they're selling the same products for the same price. And I'd almost argue that Harvey Norman are more open to giving you a better price than the good guys are on things.
Yeah, I actually went to Harvey Norman. We did a kitchen renovation, and we're up for tens of thousands of dollars worth of new appliances. And I just looked online, and I found the cheapest online retailer, and got all the prices. And then I actually just went into Harvey Norman to have a look to see what those appliances look like and if they'd fit the style of the kitchen and all that sort of stuff. And the lady just said, "Where are you getting your appliances from?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, yep, they're obviously the cheapest retailer in Australia because it's all online. There's no physical stores." She's like, "Don't tell me the price. Just tell me what you want. Give me the list of appliances and I'll give you my best price." And she came in like $4,000 cheaper than the online cheapest price that I could find. So, again, it comes back to that supplier price, and they've all got their margins. So it's just how far they'll come down on those margins. So we end up going with Harvey Norman.
Yeah,
Shout
absolutely,
out to,
Max. So I think that's really a key thing. Is that the perception in the mind is that it's a luxury goods retailer, but realistically, they're the ones that are more open to having the conversation about discounts and things like that because of the model of the store. So I think that's a good thing to look at, perception-wise, and how you build that perception in the mind. The next one's law of focus. So the most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the prospect's mind. So if you can own a singular word, when someone thinks overnight shipping in the US, they think FedEx. In Australia, they probably think Star Trek. The Star Trek Express, I think, is like the courier equivalent in Australia. And then you've got Xerox for your copier. That's probably a bit dated now, but I think generally, like in the corporate world, Xerox still owns that space. Coca-Cola for cola, even for soft drink, like even more than cola. Like when I think soft drink, I think Coca-Cola. Volvo, when we talk about for safety and things like that as well. So I think that's still pretty relevant. I think maybe in Australia, Volvo could be overtaken by, some other car manufacturers when you think about safety. I mean, when I think about cheap, there's so many different cars on the market. I used to think Kia was cheap, but now Kia have been able to increase their prices. So now I think they take like the family car with the Carnival, right? But now for cheap, it's what are those new cars that are out? God, I can't remember. But you have your Great Walls, and then
Great Wall, like I think they're South Korean.
South Korean is the other one. Yeah, but that's how they get in, right? They get in with the cheap cars. People buy them. They realize their quality. They increase the price. The same thing Kia did. That's how they enter into the market. They'd be price leaders. But then, Band-Aid, Q-tips. One thing that really amazes me is that, when you think about something like Airbnb, right? You don't say, "Oh, I'm going to rent someone's house to stay in for a short term. I'm going to get an Airbnb," is what you say.
Yeah.
So having that law of focus and being able to own the word in the prospect or create the word itself is really, really powerful. And I think that law of focus is often lost on people because they try to get to such a big market or expand to such a big audience. Whereas if you're able to own, when you look at Mitch, if someone thinks LED lights, they need to be thinking of Zeus Electrical. That's what he wants to get to, right? And so having that law of focus. I think I saw him do like a thing on fire alarms recently. Fire safety. People think fire safety, they think Zeus Electrical. People think fire alarms, they think Zeus Electrical. Those sorts of things need to be that law of focus.
Yeah. And I think like you said with Airbnb, there's some real power around if you can become like the generic word for a category. So Band-Aids is a great example. Q-tips, they're actually brands. Like Band-Aid, when you think of Glad Wrap, that's actually a specific brand. It's not,
Tupperware
plastic strips. You think of Band-Aids, you think of Band-Aids. There's actually,
but how ridiculous is it?
There.
The Tupperware still owns the plastic storage container name, right?
Yeah.
Tupperware, and it's I can't remember. I don't own any Tupperware. I've never even seen Tupperware, like the brand, available to buy in the store that I shop at.
Have a Tupperware party.
Yeah, but it's just it's crazy that how those just last through time. I think is probably the biggest bit, right?
Yeah. Law 6 is the law of exclusivity. So two companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. So you mentioned safety before with Volvo. Obviously in Australia, it might be a little bit different with different cars. But, if we think Mercedes-Benz, you think luxury. If you think of a particular product, there's generally a word associated with it that you can
Like you think
so
winning state of origin, you think New South Wales.
you think Ashley Klein, the referee, probably.
I just had to do it. I couldn't.
Maybe when you think New South Wales Blues, you think Samoa because they're all Samoans that don't actually play for Australia. But anyway, well, I guess spiteful around. Great game of football, by the way.
But I think it's a good test to run if you're in business. Is the word that you want to own. You see it all the time in YouTube, right? You get these ads. It's like when you think health insurance, who do you think of? And it'll have like 6 brands named. And you choose the one that you think of. And that's them doing market research to figure out, like, are we owning the word? And I wonder who's putting those ads out, like which health insurance company is doing it. Or maybe it's just for a study for them to go back and sell it to them and say, like, hey, we did a study and it turns out that you don't own the word health insurance. Yeah. This guy owns it. And you're like, oh, wow. So it's a good thing to do some of those surveys as well if you are running a local business. Like, when you think of LED lights, who do you think of? When you think about this, like when people think hardware or home improvement, who do you think of?
Bunnings.
Yeah. Bunnings own that space. And you saw it when, what was that other one that tried to come in?
Oh, the one they were owned by like Big W or something, weren't they?
Owned by the Woolworths Group.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Because Bunnings is owned by the Coles Group. Masters, yeah, because they're owned by Woolworths, right? And Coles owns Bunnings, and they tried to break in, and they were gone in 2 years? Yeah. It's like one of the biggest failures.
Still holding on.
Yeah, barely. But I think Mitre 10 has a different proposition because they're owned. It's like IGAs. Mitre 10 are like IGA, and so the people who go to Mitre 10 are people who value the relationship they built with the local Mitre 10 owner, and I think that's like it's a different value proposition
as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where they get the majority of their business is like local business, right? But yeah, when you think hardware, you think Bunnings. Masters tried to come in, failed miserably. Next one's Law of the Ladder, right? And this is a really interesting one because this is looking back at all those other laws and realizing to yourself, oh man, I don't own a word.
We're not number one.
I'm not the leader. I don't own a category. I'm third on the rung in the ladder. And I just have to wait for the scraps from everyone else to come through. And that's like, you need to come to that realization. If you're not the market leader, you need to realize that. And you need to come up with a strategy that shows that you understand that. And Avis did a really good job of this where they position themselves as we try harder. It's like, we know Hertz is better. We know, well, not better. We know Hertz is the market leader. We know they're bigger. But we try harder. We give it a good hook. We're going to give you the best customer service. And I think that's like you look at what Teamgate's doing with your positioning, right? You understand that Salesforce is the leader. You understand that HubSpot's the leader. But you're the best value for money CRM, right? So you try. That's like you're essentially saying you try harder.
We try harder, yeah.
Your support is going to be better. Great, we try harder. Right, that's what it's all about. Value for money, support. Like you can go and get Salesforce, great. If you're an enterprise, perfect for you. Don't come to us. Go to Salesforce. You're going to have a terrible time. You're going to spend lots of money implementing it, but at least you'll have Salesforce, right? But for people who want value for money and people who want great support, they come to Teamgate. And so you understand where you fit on the ladder, and it's just about how you position yourself on your rung of the ladder. And I think that's super important.
And the next one is the law of duality. So I guess this is in the long run, every market becomes a 2-horse race. So hopefully in the long run, it comes down to Teamgate and Salesforce. But if not, I'd say the current race is Salesforce and HubSpot, right? HubSpot have come in. I'd say they're a leader in their own category. I'd say they're the leader in like marketing CRMs. Salesforce probably still remains the leader in the CRM category. But realistically, for enterprise and big companies, it's between the two of those companies. When you think of something else like Coca-Cola, right? Who Coca-Cola in competition with? Pepsi. Back in I think it was the 60s or the 70s, it was a 3-horse race. So it was Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Royal Crown Cola. I think I've still seen them around when I was in the US.
Probably, yeah.
They're cheap. They're cheap, but it's they actually might be the Audi brand cola. It looks very similar.
Yeah, actually, I think that's right. Yeah.
But back back in the 60s and 70s, Coca-Cola had 60% of the market, Pepsi had 25%, and Royal Crown had 6%. And then you fast forward to the 90s, and it's a pretty even split between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, 45 and 40%, and then Royal Crown's almost completely disappeared off the market. So in the long run, it's going to become a two-horse race if you're one of the leaders. So be prepared for that and position yourself accordingly.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because no matter how many different bits of product come out into the market, it just ends up being that way, that the market share comes down to two horses. And it just, I guess, is looking at the amount of revenue that there is to go around and things like that come a part of it is really the big play there. But the Coca-Cola and Pepsi battle is just one that's going to continue on for time and time. I don't think either of them is going anywhere. But then you just look at people who drink Pepsi like they're weirdos. But the law of the opposite, right? Law of the opposite. So this is really important because if we mentioned about the two-horse race, right? But if you're going to be in that second place, then the strategy you take is determined by the leader. And that's because the leader owns the market, right? They own the perception. When people think about it, they own that image. So if you just try to copy that image, it's not going to work because they're just going to see you as like a knockoff, or it's just going to blur into what the other person's doing. So when you look at Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Coca-Cola went the classic route, like the old Santa Claus with the Coke. You know, it was like showing people from, the 60s drinking Coke.
We were the first. Like, we
beach
were the first.
parties with Coca-Cola. Like Coca-Cola through time. You've seen that ad where it's like on the beach and they show like the classic Coca-Cola. Whereas Pepsi and sort of like Mountain Dew and all that went like, we're the cool and hip drink. Remember those like Mountain Dew ads that were all about like skateboarding and
I remember
X
all the
Games
Pepsi
and
ads.
stuff.
They got all the like celebrities involved, right? So it was like Michael Jackson and like all these celebrities were promoting Pepsi. But I think the best one was there was a year where Coke outsold Pepsi, and they used that as a marketing. It was like 2-1. They outsold Pepsi 2-1. So they ran an ad campaign where it was a video of a young boy, and he puts his money into the vending machine to get 2 Cokes because they got outsold 2-1, and then he puts those 2 Cokes on the ground to use them to step on top. So he steps on top of the 2 cans of Coke so that he can reach the top button to buy the Pepsi. And that was their marketing campaign. It's like, yeah, you outsold us 2-1, but we're targeted towards the youth, and this is how we're going to use it in our own marketing campaign. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good use of it. And when you look at the the battle of Salesforce versus HubSpot, you look at how it's positioned itself as being Salesforce's enterprise, whereas I feel like HubSpot is like the new for people who want to be new and fast paced. You go with HubSpot. For those enterprise old businesses, you go with Salesforce. That's a different positioning they're going for. But when you look at things like, when you look at the banks as well, you can see the different positioning that the banks are taking. And you look at CBA versus NAB, how they're sort of positioning themselves a little bit different in the market and the different people that they're going for. And I think CBA is just winning that battle with its technology pretty rapidly, which is a really interesting space to be in. But then you've got all the neobanks that are coming up that are showing the opposite. But then you've got like the subsidiary banks, like NAB owns Ubank, and Ubank is a subsidiary, so it's like them rebranding themselves to be young and cool, but it's still NAB.
That, yeah, and it's even more prominent in like US banking, right? There's like complete polar opposites of services offered over in the US, but interesting to see. What's next? What are we up to? Law
of division.
Law of division. So over time, a category will divide and become 2 or more categories. So speaking from experience, obviously the CRM market, I would say split originally into sales and marketing, and it can continue to split. So I would say sales and marketing, sales is now split even more into B2B sales, B2C sales, and then even further
outbound sales, inbound sales,
sales enablement, and then you look at industries. So CRM for industry 1, industry 2, industry 3. And it's the same thing when you look at like the computer market,
you look at cleaners. People became like house cleaners, window cleaners, carpet cleaners, commercial, residential. Like it just splits and splits and splits. Like you imagine cleaning companies back in the day, they just used to clean everything. But now you got specific people who do carpet cleaners. You got specific people who do windows, commercial, residential.
Electricians, LEDs, fire, like, you know, and you could, if you got enough business in one category, you could just go and dominate that. But
that links back up into the law too, right?
Yeah,
people is looking to be first in their category, which then results in this division.
Yeah, for sure. I guess another example is like the computer market. So obviously, the computer originally started out as like that big machine, that big desktop, split into like laptops, split even further into like smartphones and tablets. So, you know, each time that a category or segment is created, it's a new opportunity to become a segment leader. So don't be too upset if you're not a segment leader now. Try to niche down, look at different segments and take that opportunity to lead there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think understanding when that division is taking place and looking for those division opportunities is really important as well. The next one is the law perspective. And I feel like this is a really funny one because a company like JB Hi-Fi falls into this category, right? Marketing effects take place over an extended period of time. If your company has constant sales, this could lead to short-term gain but long-term loss. So you look at JB Hi-Fi, they're constantly positioning themselves as having sales, constantly having sales. People just wait, right? Like smart people will wait and just go, all right, I'll wait till it comes on sale and then I'll buy it. Similar to what, you know, Woolworths do it all the time. You just see they have like rotating sales throughout the store for people to buy products. But what I would say is that one thing that's really prevalent is the Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales, the end of financial year sales, like the Christmas sales, things like that, right? Like I'll wait until one of the big sale events comes on before I buy anything else now, because the end of financial year sale's done. So now I'm just going to wait. Anything that I need that's going to be, you know, let's just say Harvey Norman, Good Guys, JB Hi-Fi, whatever, I'm just going to wait now because I'm not going to pay potentially $500 more for something just because I want to buy it next week. I'll just wait it out and it'll come on sale. I know it will. It's going to end of financial year sale will come up and I'll be like, sweet, now I can buy it.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is if you're the company, being consistent with that message over time. So, you know, if you're testing something and there's no real impacts immediately, but if you're going to stand for, like Teamgate's going to stand for value, then your messaging needs to be consistently around value for an extended period of time. You can't be, all right, now we're the CRM for this, now we're the CRM for that, now we're value, now we're for startups, now we're for, you know, it's all good in testing and testing in whether it's in isolation or, you know, specific tests over time. But that overall marketing strategy and theme needs to be consistent because, like I said, it can leave that message in a customer's mind. All right, next one is the Law 12, so law of line extension. So there's an irresistible pressure to extend the equity of a brand. So what does that mean? So it means, you know, if Coca-Cola, who's got a very good brand reputation, a lot of financials there, they go, we're going to use this brand name and this brand power to launch a new product line, and we're just going to transfer all the success over to this new product. And it doesn't always go that way, as we saw by, I think it was New Coke, New Cola, New Coke.
See, this is really interesting. There's a massive case study on Coca-Cola, right? Because they're like the king of line extension within their own product line. So soft drink, you look at, now you go down the aisle of Coke. That sort of
stuff as well, right?
But they got that, but you just look at Coke. You've got Diet Coke. You've got
Coke
normal
Zero,
Coke.
no
You've got
sugar.
Coke Zero sugar. You've got like the Coke, vanilla Coke. You got all these different line extensions that occur. And it's really funny because Coke will launch something, they'll test it and say, no one's buying this, it tastes like shit, we're just going to take it off the market. And so they're constantly looking for ways to extend their line as they move forward. And the new Coke thing, man, that kicked their ass because they were like, let's increase the flavor. And they just did a really crappy job of market research, really. That's the big learning point here, because they got, and we talk about it later on, right, where you talk about the law of success, and they suffered from the law of success where they were like, oh, we'll just launch new Coke. People love it. They love Coca-Cola. They launch it and they go, this is crap. Get rid of this Coke. Bring back the old one. And they're like, oh, okay, we didn't expect that to happen. So I think with line extension, like it's okay to extend, like to do a line extension and to extend into other markets. So we're not saying it's a bad thing.
I think
with this
it
law.
comes down to execution, comes down to preparation, research. I guess some other examples is like in the software space, you've got Monday.com is a massive project management tool. They recently extended into the CRM market. Personally, I think it will damage their brand reputation because I think it's not even a CRM. It's just another project management tool that they've labeled as a CRM. You look at other tools like ChartMogul, right? ChartMogul's a SaaS metrics tool. They've recently launched a SaaS CRM, and from all indications, the feedback was pretty bad initially. So whether they turn that around or use that feedback to develop a better product, it doesn't always transfer across, but then it can for some tools as well. So, yeah.
But I look at a builder or a carpenter, right? And they go, these plumbers get paid a fair bit to do their plumbing work. I'm going to start plumbing as well. And I start plumbing, but they're not a great plumber. They're a pretty shit plumber. And then that's gonna hurt their brand because people see like, oh yeah, I got, Marto's building company and they did the plumbing. It was a terrible job. Don't get them. They're horrible. But really their carpentry was great, but their plumbing was crap. Yeah. And so don't take a line extension simply because you want to earn more money and get greedy with it. Take a line extension because you're good at it is probably the key thing, right? So if you're
add value to your offering.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is that it's got to add, and it's got to be of good quality. So you want to make sure that it lives up to your brand name is the key thing. Like if you're a coffee shop and you decide that, we want to make food, but your food's really crap now, but your coffee's really good, then it's going to damage your brand reputation. So when you look at that line extension, just think about if you're going to do it, make sure you do it well.
Yeah. Commit.
This is probably the big thing. Like if you're going to make if you're a brewery and you're going to make a different type of beer or extend into another type of beer with a line extension, then you got to make sure it's good, which is really interesting because it comes into law 13, which is the law of sacrifice, right? And it's the opposite. You have to give up something in order to get something. And this is a really like the give and take of marketing, right? Is you can either be really specific down a category or you can try and extend your line across different areas. And there's different benefits to each. And what I would say is that if you're a smaller company or you're starting out, then you really need to focus in on the law of sacrifice. And then as you grow, you can then look at how your line extensions branch out after that. But your law of sacrifice is really saying like, okay, I'm a carpenter. I'm just going to do carpentry. I'm not going to focus on doing plumbing or concreting, or potentially only take certain type of carpentry jobs is a big one. And so a good example of this is how many times in the supermarket have you seen craft, or, you look at Coca-Cola now where it's into Fanta and, other things as well. But when you specifically look at something like craft, they're across mayonnaise, jams, spreads. I think they're even into cereals now.
Everything, yeah.
They're across the board on a whole range of different things,
Cheese.
Right? Cheese, yeah. And they probably get decent sales across the board for those, but they're not going to be the market leader in that space. And so I think that's like a really important thing is that you'll generally buy the specialist more often than not. There might be some people that like craft stuff, but generally you're going to buy the specialist one. And making sure that your line extensions are giving you enough to benefit the whole is probably the big thing. So if you diversify across too many different markets, you might actually find it detrimental to your company. Whereas if you just focused on that one thing that you do really well, then it's going to end up better for you.
Yeah, definitely. Law number 14, the law of attributes. So for every attribute, there is an opposite effective attribute. So this is basically talking about whether it's a two-horse race or you're in a market where there is a clear market leader. So look at what their strength or weakness is, and there'll be some sort of effective attribute that opposes that. So Teamgate, the market leader is Salesforce. What are they known for being? Extremely expensive and extremely difficult to use. So if we can market ourselves as affordable and easy to use, obviously that ties into our value proposition, but there is an opportunity to win by opposing that market leader. So IKEA, obviously, they're an efficiently priced furniture provider. Coca-Cola obviously is seen as the drink for an older generation. So the opposite attribute there is youth. So Pepsi has started to target youth. But even like for trades, for Mitch, right? As someone who recently went through large renovations, a lot of the trades that I dealt with, the biggest issue was reliability. So if you can market yourself as reliable, or you can be in the customer's head that, hey, when I call Mitch, he's actually going to, or if Mitch tells me that he's going to be here on Monday, he's going to be here on Monday. Or if he tells me he's going to ring me back at 5 p.m., he's going to ring me back at 5 p.m. There's an opportunity to win there. You know, another thing with trades, especially electricians, is, you know, price transparency, or, you know, they'll
Cleaning
come out cleaning the job site, which unfortunately Mitch can't win there. My wife will give a testimonial. But, you know, people want to sometimes lose trust in trades because they think they're being taken advantage of. But if you can be honest, and you can have honest conversations with your customers, which, you know, it takes 5 minutes to understand that about Mitch. If you go on his website or his social media, all the reviews are completely honest, like, talk me through the problem, you know, provided a cheaper solution than I was even looking at. Like, that's what you want. And that's how you can market yourself in that competitive market. So yeah, find what the leader is doing. And if there's anything that you can do to oppose what their strength is, or even what they're known for, that attribute that they're known for, there's an opportunity to win.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty straightforward. The next one is law number 15, the law of candor. So this is a really interesting one, right? When you admit a negative, the prospect will give you a positive. And Listerine does really well with this, where they know that it tastes like medicine, and they say, yeah, because it actually is going to kill the bacteria in your mouth, compared to these things that just taste nice. Like, yeah, sure, use Coke as your mouthwash. It's not going to kill anything. It's going to hurt your teeth. Use Listerine, and it's actually going to solve the problem that you have. One thing that I think is a really good way is that if you're offering like a good solution, say, hey, we're not going to be the cheapest. And just be honest and say, we're not going to be the cheapest. But then the prospect will go, yeah, but I've heard really good things. Like, if you're a good quality workmanship and things like that, it's like, yeah, you're expensive because you are the best. And people understand that. People want to pay for quality majority of the time. So I think it's really important there that you're able to have that candor. And you'll often say that to people is like, you'll give them a negative, and then suddenly they'll come back with, yeah, but the reason I want to go with you is because you do this. That's, I think, like a really key bit. Like, if you're able to specialize down a specific category, you can usually charge. And if you're the leader, you can charge what you like. And so being able to have that candor and bring that negative part up, or if you know your product is like, hey, we're not going to have all the features that HubSpot has. And so, yeah, but you actually responded to me when I submitted a support request, which HubSpot haven't. So, yeah, because we value support really highly. And it's like, they'll give you that back. So I think and I think you've mentioned you've had that on sales calls where you bring up like, hey, we're not going to give you the all singing, dancing solution that you get with HubSpot. And people are like, yeah, I know, but you'll actually respond when I put in a request compared to HubSpot. So I think that law of candor is really important.
Yeah, definitely. It works. The law of singularity, so law 16. So in each situation, only one move will produce substantial results. So generally this is talking about like one marketing campaign or one message or one theme. You know, if you're doing 5 different marketing campaigns, generally 80% of your results will probably come from one campaign, the campaign that sticks or works in the customer's minds. For us, and it's still really important to test. I won't say it's not important to test. So test, and then when you start to get traction, start to put more efforts into, you know, that campaign or that theme that is gaining traction. So for Teamgate, from a personal experience, when we recently won the award through Capterra, we started testing the messaging around that award, and immediately it started to take off. And that's probably because of social proofing. It's like, okay, well, these guys can tell us 1,000 times that they're great value, great support, but now they've been awarded, you know, this award from a reputable source. So it's in a way social proofing. So I would say test and, you know, see what gains traction. If you're an electrician and you're looking at, fire safety, or if you're looking at, value for money, or you're looking at reliability, test these different themes. And then once you start to get traction, start to focus on those things. Obviously, a lot of businesses, or a lot of people that follow this podcast, are small businesses. So you don't have the luxury of having, a fully fledged out marketing team. So don't spread yourself too thin. Run a couple of campaigns, and then the ones that start to get traction, focus in on those, because that's where 80% of your results will come from.
Yeah, it comes down to Pareto principle, right? 80% of the results and 20% of the actions.
Yep.
I mean, that's spread across workplaces where 20% of the staff produce 80% of the solutions, or the work, right? So it's the same sort of thing. And I think that's a really valuable thing there, where test and then just double down on things that are going to work and focus in on the singularity. So, that's pretty straightforward there. Law of unpredictability. So this is where my learning of the week about having a vision and being able to stick to that path. So unless you write your competitors' plans, you're not going to be able to predict the future, like the positioning and things like that they're going to have. So the big thing there is that being able to have a vision, a path that you're following, but not be bound by, the boundaries that you have. Like, for instance, you need to understand, people often get this myopic viewpoint about where they are in the market, and things change. So there's this big study around the train industry, right? So back in the day, the people who owned the train lines, owned the trains, were the richest people in the world. They were like rolling in cash because it was the mode of transport that everyone took, the most efficient mode of transport to move goods, enabled so much into the future. But what they forgot is they weren't in the train industry; they were in the transport industry. And so when things like cars and planes came into play, they had this opportunity there to really capitalize and get into that market and do a line extension into those areas, because they were the market leader in transport, but they didn't. And now, like, trains are second-rate travel, essentially. So being able to not have a myopic viewpoint and look forward into the future, I think, is a really good thing. Like, you look at Nokia. Nokia owned, when you thought mobile phones, you thought Nokia. 3310, everyone had one of those, right? Snake, all that kind of stuff, great flashbacks. But the thing is that when the Apple iPhone came out, Nokia thought, who's going to buy that? It's too expensive. It's not, like, it's too fragile, it'll break. It's not portable enough, doesn't have enough battery life. But they didn't see the benefits in it. And Apple saw themselves as being more in the entertainment slant, producing that mobile computer functionality, whereas Nokia just saw themselves in the phone industry. So it was like a myopic viewpoint. They didn't see themselves as a connector of people. They saw themselves as a phone. And so I think that's where they fell down. So being able to adapt as things change and progress over time, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and I think Nokia raised some good points. Obviously, Apple is expensive, doesn't last very long, but I think having a computer in your pocket,
you can't get on Instagram on a Nokia, mate.
Pretty powerful. So, law 18, the law of success. So, success often leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to failure. So, ego is the enemy of successful marketing. So, it's important to avoid bias and remain objective, and put yourself in the customer's shoes. So, think like the customer, and it probably relates back to what you just said about Nokia, right? Like, they've gone, well, no one's going to buy that. Where we own the mobile space.
Apple,
no one's,
idiots.
No
iPhone.
one's going to buy it. Like, Apple, you're a computer company, like, stay in your lane. And here we are. So, making sure you avoid that bias in your marketing. Put yourself in the customer shoes. And probably the best way to get around this is doing market research, or doing internal research. So speaking with your current customers and seeing what they think your strengths are, and using that in your messaging, rather than just saying we're the best CRM on the market, because that won't resonate with people unless there's something there to resonate with. So that is law 18.
But I mean, there's so many examples of the law of success where, like, you look at Kodak, where they owned the photography space and lost it because they didn't adapt.
Go digital.
Yeah, refused to go digital. there's so many different examples of where, like the trains as well, that's like the law of success came into play there. It's this constant myopic viewpoint about what they do, that thinking that someone who's creating a new category isn't going to affect them. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think we end up speaking to it in one of the laws coming up, but it ties back to the line extension thing, but then also the flexibility thing. Like you said with your learning is, it's to have a vision rather than a plan, right? Because a plan is like set in stone. These are the goals. These are the milestones that we're gonna hit. Whereas a vision is like a guideline. Like this is the end destination. How we get there is probably going to change. There's going to be turbulence along the way, and if there is opportunity for line extension, and it makes sense, and you can execute it correctly, then take those opportunities, because that's probably where the arrogance or the bias comes back to bite some of these companies, where they're like, well, we're killing it in our space, and they haven't identified the trends that this is where the market's going. So they just stay and lose out because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I find that a lot of these laws, it sort of has one and then slaps the other law in the face with the very next one. And this is what I love about it, because it's not just saying like, here's the blueprint. It's giving you different considerations that you need to look at. So the next one, law number 19, is the law of failure. So you need to expect and accept failure and learn from failure is probably the biggest thing. And my main man, Sam Walton of Walmart, was a big proponent of this. And so he changed the saying of like ready, aim, fire. He took that into his own arms and said, well, let's go ready, fire, aim. And so his whole prospect of that was like, hey, let's just try something, and then we'll figure out if it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then we'll adjust and we'll move somewhere else. And so Apple does this all the time. Well, not so much anymore, but they used to with the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Pencil, things like that. Like they just take a risk on something and see what sticks. They, they've had a lot of failures in Apple, and they learn from that and continue forward. And a lot of businesses, take that failure as well and are able to move forward. But one thing I'd say is that the ready, fire, aim piece in marketing is super, super important. And it's like, just put something out there and see if people like it. Mm-hmm. And then if you get a response of like, yes, we need this, give us this now, then go down that path. If you get a response of, no, not really that interesting, then don't worry about it. And we do this all the time, because it's a really effective way of getting market signal before you spend the money and do something that potentially no one wants. Like if you're in software developing new features, all these companies develop features that nobody wants, because it's like they get in their own little circle and they go, yeah, everyone will love this. This is going to be a great product feature. They launch it and their customers are like, why'd you build this for? No one cares about this. It's crap.
Just wasted a lot of money.
Yeah, if you market it and then people go, oh, this is great, I want to sign up, give me early release, and get some contracts signed and people saying, yep, I'm in, the market's there and it's ready to go. So I think that's like a really big piece there, as well as don't be afraid of failure. Just continue to grow as a part of that.
For sure. We're coming towards the end. So
we're getting there. We're actually moving faster than I expected.
20. Yeah, I'm keeping you on track. Law number 20, mate. The law of hype. So the situation is often the opposite of the way it appears in the press. So when things are going well, hype usually isn't needed. So this might actually indicate financial troubles. So I don't have too many examples of this, but I know New Coke, when they launched New Coke, had all this hype. But then when you look at it on a company perspective, it was actually a pretty big failure. And they went immediately back to classic Coca-Cola. So the other example is probably the dot-com bubble. So companies with all the massive press coverage, in the media constantly, and then, they collapsed not long after. So, yeah.
People had a lot of thoughts about this, about the Guzman Gomez listing on the IPO, listing on the stock market. There's a lot of hype surrounding it, a lot of people involved. And I think if it didn't list, it probably would have went bankrupt. But the hype paid off and they got what they wanted at the IPO, right? So I think goes both ways. But generally, when you see a lot of hype, just be wary, be cautious of what's going on in the background. There's been a few companies that have sort of gone out with a bang I guess you could say, in a lot of ways. And one thing I'd say is Salesforce were actually a thing of this, right, where they hyped up their AI inside Salesforce and were like, it's going to change the game. It's going to be, you just wait. Like, you were using AI in ways that people have never seen before. It's going to be great. And then they actually just have not done anything.
Underperformed.
Yeah, it's underperformed, right? Because they hyped it up because they wanted to build revenue around it, and it fell over. So it's like the new Coke AI example with Salesforce. But yeah, the next one, law of acceleration, law number 21, second last one. So you can't build your product, your program, your marketing strategy off fads, but you need to build it on trends, right? So people will generally try and get a hold of these fads to try and build that short-term gain. But trend is, fads are like a wave, trends like the tide, right? The trends are going to be, consistent, powerful over time. You're going to get long-term money from it. They're not really something that's like talked about. Like if you were to run a marketing campaign off the back of this outage that Microsoft and CrowdStrike have got, right? Then that's what you consider a fad. Like you go in there, you'd probably make a bit of money, you get short-term revenue gain from it, probably a bit of attention from talking about it. But realistically, it's not going to be a long-term thing. You're not going to continue to get revenue over time, right? That to me, that's a really interesting thing. I think Twiggy Forrest and Fortescue, I think, felt the burn of this recently, where they were looking for like green hydrogen and exporting that. And that has come out, I think on Thursday, that was a failure. And they've just let go of like 3,500 staff of Fortescue. First big failure of Fortescue, really. Like Twiggy's had failures in the past, but Fortescue, this is like the first big failure of Fortescue, is that they went on this this hydrogen fad and it just didn't take off. The trend towards renewables of this thing, but they weren't focused on being a renewable company. They were focused on being a hydrogen company.
Hydrogen, yeah.
Green hydrogen specifically. So that's where the difference is, right? They try to create a new category. But they failed at that. But you look at something like Tesla, where the trend is, hey, we want to move away from gas vehicles and into electric vehicles, right? So Tesla is on that trend and is a leader in that space. One of the trends that's been trying to be solved for a long period of time is accessible internet across the globe. And you look at Australia, a lot of remote locations in Australia. Mm-hmm. When you look at, people who do aid work in Africa, the connectivity has been a big problem in the past. Starlink's been able to solve that. And so the trend towards accessible internet is being fixed by Starlink. And this is where Elon just seems to get on these trends, right? The trend of space exploration. SpaceX is on that. It's not on a fad of we want to go to Mars. SpaceX has bigger goals than that, where it wants to be in space and do things in space. So I think that whole focus on the trends and look for where you can get those trends is a really important piece. Fads will give you that, that short-term flash in the pan. And I feel like fads are getting more and more short-term, which is incredible. Like things that used to last like a couple of weeks now can be over in a day. Like you look at, I think old Hawk Tour girl, right? She got signed a contract, but it was too late. By the time she had a contract and was doing events, people were like, who cares?
Yeah.
No one's interested, mate. It's over. And I'm sure she's a nice girl and whatever the case may be, that's absolutely fine. But it just shows how fads move so quickly, especially in the world today and social media and things like that. There's going to be the next big thing, which is, Trump, Trump assassination attempt, wiped any fad that was on completely off the market immediately. As soon as that happened, it was the only thing you'd see on social media was surrounding that incident.
It was Trump as 50 Cent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the fad, right? 50 Cent's Trump gets shot and suddenly my streaming numbers go through the roof. Yeah, he's it doesn't make any sense.
God. All right, law 22, the last one, the law of resources. So without adequate funding, an idea won't get off the ground. And this is near and dear to my heart. We speak about this a lot. You could have the best marketing message in the world. You could have the best themes and ideas, but unless you get it in front of people and in front of your target audience, it probably means nothing. So if you don't have a massive budget, obviously there's ways around that through like guerrilla marketing, and we should probably do an episode on guerrilla marketing. SEO, getting your content out there, but obviously it takes money, and a lot of the big, we could say overnight successes out there had a lot of money to do that initial launch, to get their product in front of customers, and then the funding to keep it in front of customers. It does take money to get a brand into the mind of the consumer, and then obviously stay there. We saw that with Amazon. They had a massive investment into their infrastructure and logistics to then become a market leader in their space. So always important to keep in mind is, of course, money, but probably more important is how to disperse the money. So like I said, if you're going to do testing and things like that, you're getting 20% of the results from, or 80% of results from 20% of the actions. That's probably where you want to spend that money, is that 20% that is generating the revenue, and be targeted and things like that. So tools out there like Google Ads, you can spend a fortune overnight and get no results. So it's really important to educate yourself on these tools, make sure you understand what you're doing. And same thing with like SEO and agencies and stuff like that. So resources and money, always a sensitive topic, but just be cognizant that they'll probably will require some kind of spend, and just be deliberate in how you spend that money.
Yeah, and I think resources come in a lot of different ways, whether that be human capital or money is the big thing there. And one thing I'd say to small businesses out there is just be wary of people who go to like business chamber events and things like that, and they're like, oh, we'll sell you ad space for X amount of dollars. Like, more often than not, they're just absolute rorts and you'll get nothing from them. So just be very, very careful, because a lot of these people prey on small business owners who don't know a lot about marketing but get sold the dream, right? So just be very wary of that. And if something sounds too good to be true, it generally is probably the big thing there. So just be wary of that. And as Andrew said, if you don't allocate enough time and resources into something, it's not going to get off the ground. So that's probably a key bit. Well, there's the 22 laws of marketing. My biggest takeaway from this is that these are none of them are hard and fast rules like, oh, you have to apply all 22. As you go through your business journey, certain laws are going to apply and certain laws are going to be irrelevant at the time, right? Like law number 1, right? Be first. You might go, well, there's already someone there first. Doesn't matter. Great. We'll go on to law number 2. Can you create a category? No, you can't. We'll try and put in law number 3, right? Be first in the mind. Can't do that. We'll build a perception, right? Focus on something. And I think this is just like, it's an ideas generator for you to look at how you can increase your revenue. And that's what I really love about it, is it's not like here's 6 tips to business success. It's not that. It's not selling this whole like, oh, if you do this, you're going to earn more money. It's just saying like, hey, here's examples of how things happen in the marketing space, and these laws have withstood the test of time. So I'd recommend reading into it a little bit more after listening to the podcast. And it's definitely a worthwhile read.
Yeah, definitely. It's a guideline, and it'll help you build out a marketing strategy and more importantly, marketing themes and things that you can test. And like I said, it's better to have themes than plans, because themes you can be more flexible with, and you can test and adjust and go through and see what sticks, and then allocate your resources. So hopefully you got something out of this for episode 16. We've got no questions on socials, so everyone's pretty slack. Get in there. We're on TikTok now. I've finally started pulling my weight on the TikTok space, and we're
He literally has one job.
We're going viral. I've had
3 views.
We've got the last 3 videos have all cracked 700 views. So
nice.
We're climbing, which is great to see. So some more engagement.
World's Coolest Readathon. I'll put the link in the bio. Join our group. We're going to do it. Beers and business. We're going to support Dylan. So make sure that you join our September team for Brothers and Books for the World's Coolest Readathon. Get into that. It'll be really interesting. Like and subscribe on socials, as Andrew said. TikTok, we're there now. Get on it. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. All the shorts are going out, so you get some snippets of some of the valuable pieces from the podcast, but also YouTube for the full length. Spotify and Apple Podcasts is where you'll find all of those. As Andrew said, get the questions, topics, guests you'd like to see. Let us know. And every Tuesday, 10 a.m., we'll release on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you're there for the next one.
Cool. We will see you then. Cheers. I miss brouhaha.
There we go.